I was 12 years old, and I was like begging my parents to go to this event that they had no idea what it even was.
Well, all my friends like through middle school always went, and I wasn't allowed to go because my parents are pretty strict.
I think my first time going to Scary Farm was in 1984, and I loved it, you know, and so I went year after year and drug all my friends, and we had all sorts of fun.
My first time hearing about it was probably back in the mid-90s. You know, I was 11 and I kind of fell in love with it.
Growing up in Southern California, everybody knows about Knott's Scary Farm. It took me a while to go though, I don't know why. But one year I decided I was going to go, I think it was 2004, with a buddy of mine, and we both decided next year we need to work this event.
My first time seeing Haunt was right around high school or a few years after. They didn't have a lot of mazes, they didn't have a lot of street talent. It was pretty much only ghost town, but it was such a great time that we thought, you know, once I get old enough, I'm doing this.
My mom used to take me to Knott's, just regular Knott's as a guest. I think I was about 9 or 10. There were lines of people lined up at the door to get in as we were leaving. And at that point, she explained to me what the Halloween Haunt was, and I was really, really pissed at her that she had never told me about it before. From that moment on till the next October, I washed cars, did extra chores, did everything I can to go to the Halloween Haunt.
The first time I ever went to Scary Farm, I was 12 years old. And a friend of mine took me to Knott's Scary Farm, and I didn't really know what to do. And I remember I lasted about a half an hour, and I ended up leaving the park because I was so upset and so rattled. But the funny thing was, the very next year, about a month out, I couldn't stop talking to my friend about going back, and I just became completely addicted, completely.
Halloween Haunt began in the fall of 1973. No one had any idea how big this would become. We were just doing it as a special event, and we had no idea if we would ever even do it again. There is no one person that came up with the idea of Halloween Haunt. There are people that I understand claim that it was their idea. Halloween Haunt actually came to Knott's Berry Farm from the character Seymour played on his KTLA Channel 5 program. What we did, and when I say we, I mean there were 5 to 8 of us, we embellished their ideas, and as employees, we came up with all the elements of the first Halloween Haunt. The Street Monster program began with in-house employees, such as the stuntmen, the saloon cast, and I was a supervisor of these people in their ordinary, normal days activities. So we used them to be the first monsters on the street. The idea of the monsters jumping out at people came from a test I had done way before Halloween Haunt. I was working in many of the different facilities at Knott's, giving breaks to the various people, and I was in the grist mill, and I thought, gee, there's all this powder grist left over. I put the white grist mill trailings on myself, and I sat in a chair just to pretend like I was a mannequin. And these people came in and were looking at me, and I jumped at them, and they went through the wall practically. Well, the original monsters were made up of many of the stunt personnel. They graduate their stunt work up to Universal Studios and into the movies. Mick Rogers, he was Mel Gibson's stuntman for years, and he was a werewolf. Auditions came to be because at first, when we stopped using our in-house personnel because the hours they were working were just tremendous, we decided to start using outside people that we would hire from Cerritos College or the local schools. When I was watching the Street Monsters, a lot of them were quiet, shy, and held back and weren't really doing what we wanted them to do. So I thought, well, what we've got to do is do some auditions. And it was such a happening that they put out a news release, and ABC, NBC, CBS, all the local channels, the newspapers were there because they wanted to see how you auditioned a monster. It was hard to audition these people. We had a hard time even keeping a monster for 5 days. I mean, they quit. They got so tired. We do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday they start peeling off. But a cult has arisen that these people live and die for Halloween.
My 6th grade year, when my mom told me I was too old to go trick-or-treating. And I was devastated because I didn't know what I was going to do with myself on Halloween. It's like, what? I'm not going to man the door with my parents and hand out candy. That doesn't sound like fun. When are you ever too old for free stuff is what I couldn't understand. So my dad helped me out. He figured something out. We tacked a curtain up over a side door near the front door. I put on a ratty pair of jeans and a ripped up dress shirt and a crappy werewolf mask, and 10 years later, I found myself at Haunt.
I ended up going when I was 13 years old, and from there I was just hooked. Everything I saw, all the monsters doing, was just so attracting, and I was just like, oh, I want to do this. So right when I got home, I started decorating my house, and then from there it just got bigger and bigger each year. I'd scare in my backyard, I'd set up mazes and stuff.
I first went to Knott's Scary Farm as a fan of Halloween. I used to do my own house every year with my friends on the street, and we used to love scaring each other, so it was a natural fit for Halloween. So we used to make coffins and gravestones and decorate the front.
I did my own home hunts, spent a lot of my own money and my parents' money, and finally decided one year, just on my own, man, I want to get paid for this. I want to see if I can pull this off, and I went and auditioned.
Right when I turned 18, I just went down there and I filled out an application and camped out for, I think, a grand total. I was awake for like almost 30 hours.
I remember going to audition, I had no idea what to expect. And they basically herded us back to the Good Time Theater, and they filled the entire theater.
The original auditioning process was a room full of people.
And it was just like people everywhere. There was like 300 to 400 people in there watching our auditions, and they had like 6 people on there, and they would ask us to do different things.
Everyone else who was auditioning that day got to watch.
I think the first one I had of that year was act like a marionette. And at first I really didn't know what a marionette was at first. I knew what a string puppet was, but didn't know it was called a marionette.
My thing that they gave me was act like you're turning into a werewolf.
They told you to do Shakespeare, move around the room, be a monster. If you were this type of monster with a broken back, how would you move? And
I remember the guy next to me was nervous as all heck, and after the first group went, he used some choice words. He just said, "Fuck this," and he got up out of his chair and he walked out.
It's kind of nerve-wracking. It felt like, I wouldn't say American Idol status, but it was nerve-wracking going up there and, doing your character without any makeup or costume on.
It was just such an intense feeling going through the auditions when you see that many people and you don't really know how many spots are there and where are they gonna put me.
Someone gave me a a paper, it said Camp Snoopy Streets. I had no fucking idea what that meant. But the guy next to me said, holy shit, you got a street monster position.
Craig Harold, which used to be the Haunt Father, he came up to me and said, "Hey, you did a good job, and you're gonna be out in the streets scaring people." I had no idea what that was until I got to the streets of Camp Snoopy.
They walked me out the side door, and I thought that I was done. I thought they were just walking me out, and they put me in a room with a lady, and she said, "Oh, you got Camp Snoopy streets." And I said, "Oh, I'm in Camp Snoopy?" Like I had this look like I'm working at Camp Snoopy? There's kids in Camp Snoopy. Like, what do you mean? And she said, "That's actually a really cool thing to be a street monster right out of an audition." Quickly came to figure out after the first couple nights that being able to run around all over the place and not being stuck in a room is such a cool thing, because you can use the environment, you can use the guests, and there's nothing like it. There's nothing like being a street monster at Knott Scary Farm. There's nothing like it.
Why you have come here, and I will destroy your mind.
The only person I recognized was Jef Long, and I remember the little screw in his face, because he had makeup on, and it was a little prosthetic screw that went through here to here. He has a little flat top. I think when we first started, there was maybe 20 people in CS.
In the old days, there were very few makeup spots. Camp Snoopy was considered the bottom of the barrel when it came to street monsters anyways.
I forgot what the exact theme was, but it was basically Teenage Mutant Vigilantes. So it was almost like they took all the leftovers of Knott Scary Farm, all the leftover costumes, threw them in a big room. We were wearing jeans and t-shirts, Bert and Ernie shirts. We were all like kind of punk rockers.
It was a big giant box of masks, and depending on which order you got your position, that would determine how low and how shitty of a mask you got. Mine was pretty much towards the bottom, but I was happy because it fit my head.
They didn't have very many masks to choose from. My costume was actually Boy Scout. The mask came over the head, it had this little camp hat on, and had this swollen cheek. And the mouth was over here. So every time I had to talk to somebody, I had to like pull the mouth over. So I mean, a lot of people watching this, they're gonna know what "what's up, dog" means. Because I would, back in the day, I was like, "What's up, dog? What's up, dog?" So I had to keep on pulling my lips so I can talk.
Unfortunately, I got stuck with a character called Rot Cop. I had a mask that was so big, we had to put sponges in the top of it. My buddies at the beginning of the night had to duct tape my entire mask shut. And I had friends that would come by in the middle of the night and actually hit my mask so hard that it would turn sideways and I was looking out the ear. It sounds so frustrating, but I loved every second of it, loved it.
Sliding began at Knott's Berry Farm with myself and a couple other guys that were basically trying to find something else that was a better scare tactic, because I was 5 foot nothing, I weighed 100 and nothing, And everybody around me were gigantic guys. I started in Camp Snoopy. That was my first place I ever worked in '87. Sliding at that time, there were a few guys who were sliding, but it was more of like baseball sliding. It was almost like a belly flop or like a Pete Rose or like a baseball feet first sort of slide.
My first year was in a place called Dance Hall. It was a maze called Third Dimension. There was no Snoopy or whatever the name of it was. They didn't have monsters there. There was no swamp. There was one spot where street characters were at, and it was Ghost Town. Moved to Streets my second year, 1988. I think there was me and one other person. We had heard about these people that used to slide on the ground, but it was just, again, it was not part of anybody's style of scaring at that point in time. Me and Wade Gordon and a couple of other people, well, let's just try it and see what happens. And so we'd go running across and slide up to these people, and it was probably all of about 2-3 feet at that point in time, but the fact we were coming in at different angles, it really got a different scare out of people. We started going, hey, this is something.
We started using what we called slider cans. We would take like a soup can and we would bend it to get it to a shape where you could scrape it on the ground. And basically what we would do is we would put on like volleyball knee pads, and we would kneel on the ground, and then we would kneel into a bush. And then when people would walk by the dark corner, we would push with our feet off a fence or whatever and just slide out, scraping those things on the ground. And it was amazing. It made the best noise. It was super loud scraping sound.
It was very physical when we first did it. You had to be willing to run, throw yourself on concrete with basically cloth. Started off with the jeans, the cheesecloth that hung on the buildings. We used to get extra from backstage. We brought in leather gloves and duct tape. We realized that the more you slid, the heat would harden them, and you'd put more and more duct tape, and we actually had a hard shell around the leather glove. We were ripping through clothes. We would come in at the end of the night, my legs would be sticking out. There would be just, you'd see me in my underwear, and it's like, because I'd shred them, crawling around on the ground and sliding. I would say that me, Wade Gordon, I mean, there may be somebody else, and he may be able to remember a name, but I think we were the first ones that really kind of started the whole sliding thing.
He's the roughest, the toughest, and the meanest man west of the Mississippi. So let's bring him on with a real big hand, Mr. J. Meade.
Jay was not a regular monster. Jay was part of the stunt crew. Jay was way integral with the hanging. And every once in a while he would come out. It literally was like the last night of that run. So he was out playing. And it was a rainy night. And there was like this nice little pole going down the center. We were just like sliding through it, splashing people and having a great time and scaring the crap out of them. But there was only a handful of people doing it. Most of it was just, we were going for feet. And then it just turned into a baseball slide. That was my first night of really sliding, was with Jay. So what the hell are you doing? I'm sliding. Cool. Show me.
I'll never forget this. I walked in a hardware store and I thought, well, what if I got like a work glove and I put like metal pieces on it, like washers or something, some sort of metal things, and I can scrape that on the ground. We ended up coming up with slider gloves that we put together, and I just came up with a way to put metal washers on the glove like this, and that way I could actually grab something if I had to. And then I just used plumber's tape or strapping tape to build these little bands that were like little fingertips that I built. And then, yeah, made the very first gloves right here. In the 70s, when we would go, there was a lot of skateboarding. Skateboarding was super hot. So there was a lot of skateboard parks everywhere. And we ride in the skateboard park, you had to have the big knee pads with the big plastic caps on the top. And I thought, I wonder if they still have those. I'd love to find those, because in the 80s, skateboarding disappeared. There was a lot of insurance problems and a lot of issues that came up, and so all the skate parks went away. So did all the skating equipment. That all went away, except for the skateboards themselves. And then in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, Tony Hawk appeared. And then all of a sudden, whoa, and then it was like crazy stuff everywhere. But I went in, before that was hot, and I asked a woman, I said, do you still have the recaps that go on top of the knee pads? She literally reached under a cabinet and pulled out a Vans shoebox and blew dust off the top of it and opened it up, and there were like 4 pair of plastic recaps, bright orange and bright blue. And I was like, I'll take them all. So I scooped those up, and I had to actually hot glue those onto volleyball knee pads. So I got the soft knee pads, but I just glued those on. And those were the first slider knee with the plastic caps on them. They wanted everybody that was top of the line to go to Ghost Town. So myself and a couple other guys were streamlined to go over to jump over to Ghost Town because we had our little niche that we had come up with.
I remember seeing Todd come up. It was his first year over in Ghost Town. I guess I had heard about him over in Camp Snoopy before, and seeing him slide for the first time and hit the ground, we were like, aha. Didn't take very long. It was like, okay, so this is taking it to a whole nother place. He had really worked out a big jump that was not only safer, it was more effective scaring, and he could control it really well.
There was a rivalry going on between like Camp Snoopy and Ghost Town. Like, we try to show them up and try to be, you know, the best area in the park. We're better than you. No, we're better than you. No, we're better than you.
There was a lot of drama that was brought on by people that were not monsters. I don't know why. I've heard different stories. You know, it was good to have the competition between the two. There were factions of the corporate suits that wanted to pit us together. There was different styles because of that, because there's no internet, there's no communication, no one talked backstage. I used to wear cowboy boots. I used to take cowboy boots and some plastic and glue them around the outside of my cowboy boots, and they'd always fall off, and I'd glue them back on.
They had a box of boots, and they were awful. They were just like, they were never our size. And scraping on the ground now, you drag your feet when you slide to kind of use as a rudder. I burned through several pairs of those boots, just shredded them right all the way down to my feet.
There's somebody that probably is not going to be mentioned on this video by the name of Mike Reichman. Him and I were very close when we worked in Camp Snoopy together. He left Haunt many, many years ago. He discovered some pads and started wearing his pants in a way that was more comfortable, and what these guys are used to now is they used to put their knee pads on top of their jeans and put cheesecloth on them and everything, and Mike had this idea of putting a big hole in his jeans, wearing tights and wearing them under his jeans, which is way more comfortable. He also was a professional rollerblader, a freestyle, so he tried wearing ramp pads. And he introduced me to those. And him and I were very good friends, so we practiced in his garage, and we ended up buying ramp pads. And you know, this is before recaps were invented. I was wearing catcher pads, and you know, they cover your whole shin and your foot and everything. They would last one weekend, and then you'd have to go to buy more and buy more. So you'd end up spending your entire Haunt salary on knee pads.
I didn't believe it, you know. Ghost Town's this and Ghost Town's that. You know, I didn't want to believe it because we thought, you know, this tight-knit group that we are, we thought that we were the best.
I loved Camp Snoopy. I was in there, I bled CS, whatever you want to call it, the gauntlet. I loved it. Transitioning from Camp Snoopy to Ghost Town was highly frowned upon by the Camp Snoopy monsters, shall we say. They expressed their displeasure quite a few times, especially at like rehire and orientation. You know, I had people, traitor, you know. I had to own it.
I eventually got invited over to work in Ghost Town for about 3 nights the year before I left, and I actually went in my gauntlet costume to Ghost Town for 3 nights.
And we didn't want to take our talents somewhere else. That all changed. The first night I worked in Ghost Town, the area, so many places to go, so many different elements you can use. Fog, no fog, lots of fog.
To me, there was nothing better than a few blue and green lights and a bunch of cheesecloth and a lot of fog.
Even when you're a monster, you're walking through there alone and it's quiet, it is just creepy. There's no decor needed. It's creepy on its own.
Ghost Town really had its own natural setting. It's a ghost town, obviously. You have great displays there, a facade of a ghost town, and great fog, lighting, atmosphere. Camp Snoopy had fucking Peanuts characters, a little clock going off every hour with Snoopy marching around.
Fog Alley, for me, started when I was a fan first coming to the event. And I walked under the ghost town sign, looked down Fog Alley, and just go ahead and made a right and just avoided it. And then finally went through and I was like, this is awesome. There's monsters coming out left and right.
Scaring in Ghost Town, as opposed to anywhere else, is so nostalgic. It'd be like if you were a basketball player getting to play on at Staples Center and growing up watching the Lakers.
I inherited the prisoner character, taken from David Dean, and I just wanted to live up to that and just go out and just wreck people.
There was two types of sliding. You had the scaring kind, where you run through the crowd, you hit the ground and do a thing. There's the hanging show at Knott's. That's the big central show. And at the time, a grip of us were used as like stagehands in a way to sit in the front. There was a big gap between the stage and the crowd. And that's where they had the big fall pits, the big pit pads that you would jump off the high things and land on these big foam pads. And so we had to make sure that the guys weren't going to miss the pad. We had to make sure they didn't fall off. We had to make sure guests weren't jumping over the barriers and trying to run up and be crazy or throw things.
When the hanging was still using actual monsters in the production to do a lot of the spotting and stuff like that for the actors, we would all get together and do a pre-show to get the crowd warmed up.
Think of Whose Line It Is Anyways, coupled with zombies, coupled with What Stupid Things We Can Do in front of the crowd.
We would just start screwing around. Hey, I bet you I can jump you. Look at this, I'd learned this new thing. I remember when the first person jumped somebody.
I mean, it wasn't just sliding, but that's what it was based around. Like we would do slider tricks, jumps, just random stuff that we could come up with, out of left field, and we just, let's try this.
We would do like run and go see how far we could go. And then we started to do spins. We figured out a way where we could spin around, and we would make a tunnel with our legs. Everybody would stand, all the monsters would stand in a row. We'd all shoot through the big tunnel. We had a limbo bar. We would try to go under the slide doing the limbo bar. You either go under it or go over it, whichever you felt you were more strong at. And so that was the other part of sliding, became like a stunt show, became like tricks. And that was really fun. It wasn't really scary, but it didn't really matter. It became like this pre-show that was sort of became a thing where people expected it. Like they came in and it was like, where's the pre-show? So we would come in and we were almost as much of a show as the show was. Now you've got guys that come in the first year. They've been coming to Haunt now for a couple of years and they see this and they're like, I can't wait till I work here. I'm gonna get a job and I'm gonna do that. So then they get a job and they would come in and right off the bat, they would go out and they would spend all this money and they would buy all these pads and buy all these, make these gloves and all this stuff. And then they would just get hurt. We wouldn't go in the right area. They don't know how to watch the crowd. The crowd is like, it's an entire living organism. And you really can watch how things move and how things flow and cut around the gaps and things like that. But if you haven't done it enough, you don't know how that works. So Knott's had to come in and go, okay, look, if you're gonna have this thing, it's great, but we have to be safe about it. So they kind of threw down the gauntlet of if it's your first year, no sliding your first year. And then they said, well, if we're gonna have people that want to do it, they should learn it somewhere, or at least be approved to do it. So we had to come up with a series of tests.
In order to be a certified slider, you have to work a year of streets. So you not only have to work a year of streets, you have to be good enough to pass the slider test, which everyone has to take before they're even allowed to step foot out there with a pair of knee pads on.
The whole progression of sliding, the evolution has been insane. From where it started, the equipment is ridiculously different. Now everything is top of the line skate pads, steel toes, gloves lined with steel. The skill level that these younger generation have is incredible. They slide faster, they're more dynamic, they have more energy, and they don't blow their muscles out.
Kids are getting better and better, so you had to up your game, you know, as far as sliding, as far as scare tactics, because a lot of people want that job.
None of our sliding gear is provided. It's something that you have to make yourself and put together, and you learn that from the other people, and it's all kind of passed down, in our heritage of monsters, if you will.
Any really good slider is going to tell you that they make their own gear, because there's such a difference in technique between sliders, and I'm very good at this because I used to study basketball film and all that stuff when I was a coach, and I can go out to the rinks right now and I could watch everyone slide and I can tell who's heavier on their hands, who's heavier on their feet, who's heavier on their knees, who likes to lay down, who has really loud slides, who has stealthy slides, and every guy is very, very different. I'm very heavy on my hands, so I didn't want anybody making my gloves because I wear double the metal that everyone else wears because I was so heavy on my hands. Most guys don't like my gloves because they weigh about 5 pounds.
The one difference for me between probably most sliders that I've ever seen is that I always use the fingerless gloves. So you see those broken fingers there? That's my trick there. There's a lot of monsters out that have these great, awesome gloves that they spend hours working on. They have these great metal things on, but they never be able to take a piss with their gloves on like I can. They never be able to go to the break room and get some curly fries and eat them like I can, not take my gloves off.
The big bands that I had over my fingers in the other gloves were heavy and awkward, and it took forever to make those things. And so I tried to come up with a better way, so I came up with a different glove, and we came up with the idea of a fingertip type piece on a different type of glove. This is actually a BMX bicycle motocross glove. It was a guy who came in one day and figured, oh, it's all about going fast. So he was sitting in the warehouse P one day and he had skateboard trucks with wheels, and he was trying to glue them to his knee pads to figure, oh, go really far, really fast. And we're just like, please let me be there when you try those out.
I didn't go the route of everybody else. I liked having a lot of control, like brakes, because to me, the duct tape, it became hard plastic after it melted years and years and years in. I liked having my braking and steering ability when I did it. So I never went to the washer metal fingertip route. I kept my old school gloves and put the knee pads on, and that was enough distance for me.
For me, it was always important to make my own gear. I wanted to know what I was doing, how I can improve it, if something breaks, how I can fix it. Plus, I just like building things, and I like it was almost making my suit of armor before going into battle. I felt,
Every year I make myself a new pair of gloves. I use the welding gloves. I like 1/4 inches of steel on my palm.
Got a 14-inch stainless steel gold mining pan I get from Alaska. And to this day, I'm the only one out there that's allowed to have a metal object. The fire steel, I started doing that probably about 4 or 5 years ago. The first time I slid in the dark, it was like somebody shined a spotlight behind me. I've never caught anybody on fire, never caught the porches on fire or anything, because it's always behind me. I'm sure somebody will screw that up. Somebody might try and use it and they'll get a guest or something, and they'll say, oh, okay, you can't use this anymore. But until they do, I'm gonna keep doing it.
You have to practice on your own. It's not a 9-to-5 job, it's a non-stop job, because we're doing this year-round.
They see us doing tricks, doing stunts. They don't see the practices 2 days a week.
I started a group on Facebook called Slide Practice Nerds just to stay in contact with my friends that wanted to do it, because it was a way to stay in shape. I mean, you slide, and it's anybody that's never slid before and they come do it, it's like doing 1,000 squats in that day. They're gonna be limping for a week, I've had lots of friends come down there and give it a shot and crawl away.
A lot of people come into Haunt as a monster just thinking I'm gonna slide and just do all these funny tricks and all that stuff. I was never really about that. I was more about using sliding as part of my character.
Sliding is just another tool. It's like a shaker can or a thunder jug. It's a tool in your bag that you should use to scare somebody, but it shouldn't define your character.
Sliding was invented to scare people. If you want to slide, slide to scare people.
Character is what people come back for. Yeah, sliding is always going to be there, but be a character.
My character development, it takes a long time, it takes a lot of thought, it's got to be something that you're comfortable with, and you kind of have to lose yourself in it. And if you don't, people know. You need to convince them that you are that character, and it's not easy.
One of the reasons why they took sliding away from first years was because that was all they did, that was all they wanted to do. And I say, that's not the only way. Be good at it. Make sure that is a tool in your arsenal. Make sure you're coming down the street and you see that person go, that person's gonna get scared by a slide. You've got that. You drop that, bam, hit that slide.
Sliding's a lot more popular now than it was in the 90s as far as people, non-monsters, doing sliding. You can go on YouTube and see people sliding here and sliding other parks across the world and everything.
It's not just the park. You go to any haunt event, anywhere, people are sliding around the world. Okay, we're not talking Knott's, we're not talking about these other amusement parks. It's an around the world thing.
This year I was in New Hampshire at a small theme park called Canopy Lake. They put on their own haunt events, and I happened to be walking through the park and I heard somebody slide. And I was like, whoa, it was a female. And everyone was like, whoa, look at that, oh my God, the slider. So I had to say something. So I walked up to her and I said, hey, I go, that's pretty cool what you do. And she's like, yeah. And I said, I happen to be from Knott's Berry Farm, and I was a slider for 21 years. And she looked at me and I said, so I'm just wondering how you found out about sliding. And she said, on the internet, on YouTube. And she found out from Knott's Scary Farm. And so I asked to see all of her equipment, and it was really cool because I gave her like hints on how to make better equipment and knee pads and all this stuff. And she knew us. She knew about the Knott's Scary Farm sliders. And this is in New Hampshire. That's a pretty cool thing, and it just gives you goosebumps. And it was such a neat thing.
Who is Merrick? Merrick is someone you don't want to invite over for the holidays. He's that crazy.
Why does your mind cower in my presence? In my presence, you don't judge who I am.
Merrick is the guy who walks around talking to his thunder jug.
How does it happen? How does it work?
He's that crazy uncle that everyone goes, oh my God, he's here.
It's okay. It's okay.
Being around Merrick is like being around your friend's parents fighting.
It's not in your destiny to survive tonight, honey. It's not in your destiny.
He talks to the skeletons on top of the hotel porch in Ghost Town.
Don't talk to me ever again before I devour your own little head.
Yeah, these skeleton guys, they keep talking about him for some reason. I don't understand it, but he has the longest arguments with him.
Not before you die, before you all live. I am not responsible for what I do.
The real reason why Merrick really wanted to just yell at the people on the balcony was because they see Merrick as a threat to them because they might be leaving one day. And Merrick might take them somewhere and bury them in a grave that they don't want to be with anymore.
Oh my gosh, he puts on these headphones, and it's funny because he's in regular clothes and just has his makeup on, and he goes out and is like amongst these props and he's air guitaring the whole time, just yeah, for like a good, I want to say 5, maybe even 10 minutes, just getting in the zone.
If I did my pre-haunt ritual, I would be talking to you as Merrick right now, and you would see a completely different person.
I've seen him get a scare out of somebody that there was no way, like they didn't start scared. He ended up convincing them.
I can take the most asshole 8th grade kid trying to impress his friends and all that, and I can turn a situation around where he's like, okay man, dude, stop, no, I'm gonna keep going, I'm going, and he'll take off running, scared out of his mind.
This guy is a wrecking ball out there. He comes out that gate, he's got his thunder drug, he's got his duster, he's got his attitude.
Do not tempt me, do not tempt me, do not tempt me, do not tempt me, do not tempt me. Do not tempt me ever again!
He talks to anything that is inanimate or anything in general and seems to have a whole world in his brain that we are not privy to.
Those people really don't understand. They don't understand at all. Yeah, you do. Oh, you do. Oh, but you do. Oh, we just think it's so good.
We joke. We wonder one day when Merrick's gonna take over.
There's a night that Paul and myself were, doing our thing, and we see
mentally challenged people came into the park. There was about 20 of them. And some of them wearing bright silver helmets, some of them in wheelchairs, and we're standing in the corner, and
no one's messing with them, everybody's staying away from them, and I'm like looking at them like, dude, we got to get them.
And I said, no.
We have to.
I'm like, no, dude, no. He's like,
we have to.
Him and I slid out, and we literally leveled the entire group.
I mean, full force. Wham! People falling out of chairs.
And at first, I felt really horrible until the person that was their liaison walked over to Cowboy Bobby.
They took me aside and thanked me because everybody was avoiding them.
She's like, we have been walking around the entire night, and because these kids came to have a really good time, you guys are the only ones that had the courage enough to scare them.
The way I saw it, anybody who pays for a ticket is fair game. You know, they come in and they want to have a good time, and no exclusions.
My first year, and I saw this really cute blonde girl from way across the way. And so I thought, oh man, I gotta run up and slide and scare her and do some kind of trick and impress her or something. So I ran up, jumped down, sliding, and as I'm sliding, I noticed the guy next to her has this bright blue suit on. And I'm getting closer and closer, and it's a bright blue Michael Jackson suit on. And I'm getting closer and closer, and it's a bright blue Michael Jackson suit on with a white glove. And I was like, what the fuck? And I jump up, and I'm like, oh my God, is this gonna be Michael Jackson? I jump up, and it's Corey Feldman.
As it is, I didn't have my life. And that's all I've known, you know, since I've been an adult, you know, is Knott Scary Farm, you know, and anywhere I go, I'm wanting to scare people. And it sucks because I'll do it sometimes and then, you know, the people I'm with are like, dude, you're not there anymore, come on.
There's no rehab center that could ever get that feeling out. I wouldn't go. If they said, you have a scaring problem, I would never go to that rehab.
You know, I love Ghost Town. It's been a part of my life for 10 years, and I'll keep doing it until I can't.
I'm an addict. I love it. It's probably not the healthiest thing I've done.
It was my life for 20 plus years, and most of the friends I've ever made and people I've met along the way, and my life would be, if you think about it, my life would be completely different if I didn't go to that audition, if I just said, nah, I'm just gonna sell candy and watch other people scare.
It was very difficult to quit, I'll say that. Yeah, there's still to this day, I mean, I've been gone as many years as I've worked it. And there's not a year that goes by that I don't think about, oh wow, they're going into makeup right now. It's opening night. I mean, it's still to this day. I smell a smoke machine at my own front porch that I set up every year. I'm like, Ghost Town. It's a special thing. It's hard to explain unless you've done it. You've been involved with it. It runs very deep.
Not only do I get to scare people and do something that most people don't realize is like the best job in the world, I get to do it with my friends.
Recently retiring last year, honestly, was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. That last night, I've never cried so much. It was rough. You know, people talk about the lure of Ghost Town and how scary it is. That's not what it is for me. I have some of the best memories. I met my wife there, you know, right under the Ghost Town sign, and I proposed to her there, and you know, some really, really great things out of my life have come from there.
haunted attractions in San Diego, which is that is a big bug.
A little bit deeper. It itches. It itches.
2 years ago, I gave someone a seizure, so that was pretty cool. I don't think I reported that, by the way.
This is the Ghost Town Gecko. He's pretty badass. Look, he's just running around, chasing guests, like he doesn't even care. Ew, what's that? Is that a teenager? Ew, get away, Gecko.
I was in Fog Alley, right in front of about 9 vets. Trish, Allie, Wade, Dieterman, Josh Ballard, Lucifer. I mean, they were all up on the one porch. And I slid out with the pan, jumped up, scared the hell out of this guy. He jumped back and puked right in the middle of the street. And I just threw my arms up and I hear, "Sugar!"
Can you handle 7 inches?
Cut.